Okay, let me show you how to finish up a project. I've got well, here's one track with my original source sound on here, but I've muted that, and that's just fine there. We won't hear it, and it's fine to leave it there. And this is my very, very short project. Yours may be longer if you're going to get an A in any class around here, but this will be great for our purposes. So I've got one sound, and I've got one effect running on it, and this is what it sounds like. Okay, so we got one cool gesture in there. Now notice we've got some red numbers in here. These are indicating that we've clipped, or we've overdriven, or we've made a sound louder than the computer can really represent. So it may have sounded fine as we were listening to it now, but when it tries to write this to the disk as a sound file, it's going to have to leave off some of those numbers and chop off the tops of our waveforms, and the sound is not going to be good. So if I see that that's happened, we had those red indicators up here, and they were red until I clicked them to make them go away. We know that we need to look back and see what to do. So I can bet that this loud part up here, oh, there it goes. You see that? Okay. So that's where it's starting to clip, right there. Okay, so we have some choices. We could take the whole track and turn it down. We could take the whole of our output. Remember, this channel on the right side is the output, and we could turn it down. Neither of those are really going to be the best solution in most cases. If I look at the automation, I could tweak it a little bit and see I've actually kind of made it clip here just for an example, but we could say, okay, this is the point where it's clipping, so let me change that curve a little bit and maybe dip down and then go back up to where I wanted it to be. But I'm just going to go back to where we were before so we can leave it clipping, and I can show you another way to handle this. And say we want this to be a big thing and we don't really want to take the whole sound, or I don't want to, maybe this is happening so many times that I don't want to have to go in and edit each individual one. We can use this output channel strip here and put a limiter on everything. And actually I'm going to put it in the second position right now so we can do some other stuff later. But I'll make a limiter, and any insert that runs on this output channel will affect everything that we hear, or everything that gets written to the disk. So now, instead of using the limiter with extreme settings where we're taking percussive sounds and turning them into more sustained sounds, we're going to, for one, just have the limiter in here in the first place. As soon as we just turn it on, it's going to prevent our signal from getting over zero. So watch as I play, and watch our levels down the bottom left corner. We can see down here, the bottom left corner, that while our track clipped, the level was fixed before it made it out of the computer, and so we peaked right at zero, and that makes sure that we're using all of our dynamic range. You might, at this stage, and this is at the stage where we're finishing up our composition, we're mastering the whole thing basically, you may want to actually just kind of beef up the weak parts, the delicate parts of the sound just a little bit. Not to extreme amounts like we were doing before, but maybe just a little bit. Use bypass, go back and forth, and try different settings, and see if you like it. Often a little bit of dynamic range compression like this can be useful, make your piece sound stronger, healthier, less brittle in a way. Also, if your levels were maybe too low and you're only getting up down in the middle of your dynamic range here, you could use this as a safe gain control to boost things, and you'll know that if you need to boost it this much, well, maybe you haven't normalized your files, or maybe you've got some other weird settings. But if you need to, you could boost it up here, and the limiter will still make sure that the loudest points don't cause problems when it starts to write it to the disk. So we'll leave just a little bit here. You'll really have to listen very carefully to be able to tell the difference here. But I left one space blank up here. These run in order, remember, because really the limiter should be the last thing. There aren't many other effects that you might want to run on your entire output. Sometimes we may want to create submixes where we send parts of our signals to a separate bus and we put reverb on all of those things so they sound like they're in the same room or things like that. But really the only other one that's common to add on your output channel here is an EQ. And just as with the limiter here at this stage, we're at the mastering stage, we're not going to be seeking drastic transformations of our sound. This would be the time to listen to our sound and say, well, maybe it could use to be a little bit brighter, and we're going to be going for much more subtle transformations of sound. And say, well, it's kind of muddy. Let me take out a little bit of the bass. Or maybe it sounds really good, and there's one part that I want to keep loud, but it's just really grating at one frequency, like around 2 kilohertz, where we hear very well. If it's just too resonant there, we could use a peak or notch filter and just gently carve out that one range. And if we hover over this dot, we have the Q control. We can control how steep it is, and maybe that'll help tame that one area without doing too much. So we want all these to be fairly subtle changes to things, and this is something that's changing our whole mix. If we want something more dramatic, it would be better to go back into your original sounds, or at least the tracks, and make your changes there. Okay, so with these arbitrary settings here, I'll leave these. And when you're doing this with the limiter and the EQ, do go back and forth, bypass, listen to the original, and listen to your processed version again, and make sure that what you're doing is an improvement. It's very easy to make tiny little tweaks and end up with something that has been quote unquote improved so much that it's much worse than the original, and you've made problems or made new problems or made your other problems worse instead of fixing them. So let me listen to our piece now. Okay. So now we're ready to export our piece so we can listen to it. And actually, let me move it over here, and I'll move my automation data with it, just in case you happen to have deleted something at the beginning, at the time where it was 0, or if you just happen to start somewhere outside of 0. You're probably not going to want this dead silence in the beginning. You might want a little, and that can be okay too, but don't do any more than a couple seconds. And when I have such a gradual beginning in here, I don't really want any silence before it starts. Notice also that my sound keeps going because it's being processed by the delay. And so really, let's see where my piece actually ends. So the sound coming in ends here, but the delay keeps going. And we'll say with some padding on the end, some silence to reflect on the piece, maybe I want it to end right about here, 14.5 seconds. Okay. I also obviously don't want to include all of this. So all of these things, the space at the beginning, space I need at the end, space I didn't want at the beginning, and I certainly don't want to include all of this, is building up to me being able to tell it exactly what to pick. And that's what the locators are for. We used them before just to zone in on one sound. We do the set locators and it automatically does that. Or you can just drag up here and set the locators and say, I want it to start right here, and I want it to go until, now let's go ahead and go to 15 seconds. It's making me round anyway, and I think that'll be fine. So this much is the span of my piece. Any sound that happens in here is the stuff that I want to mix down to a sound file. And the feature that does that is called bouncing. It's for historical reasons. When back in days when we were recording multiple tracks onto tape, we could only fit so many tracks on the tape at once. Often in smaller studios, it was only 4, so we would record. Maybe we would record all our drums and mix them down, and they would be on one track, and then the rhythm guitar would be on another track, and then the bass guitar would be on another track. Then I only have one more track left, but I still got lead vocal and background vocals and my tambourine girlfriend and the guitar solo I wanted to overdub. I can't fit them all on that one track, so what I do is I take the 3 tracks I've already recorded, mix them down, and record them onto my one free track. Then that gives me 3 more tracks, the original 3 tracks that I can record over. And so all of this shuffling around of the tracks, just because of limited space, was called bouncing, because, well, I guess shuffling kind of made a little bit more sense. But it goes over here, then goes over there, and gets recombined. That's why it's called bouncing. And the thing you need to remember is it's called bouncing up here on the file menu. Bounce. Okay, now we have some decisions to make. First of all, the name of the piece. I could call it my project, my piece. So make sure you type in a name that we'll be able to recognize. Make sure you know where you're saving it. The desktop would be a good place. Let's see. We have some options here for format. PCM is the normal uncompressed way of encoding sounds, as opposed to the actual file extension. The file extension business is over here, whether we want AIF or WAV. Either one should be fine. And we want 16 bits of resolution because we're going to be putting this onto a CD probably. If you were going to be putting it onto a DVD, you might want to go with higher resolutions, or if you were bouncing something just so that you could mix a complex set of sounds together and then re-import them into your session as one sound, then you might want to leave this as high as possible. But we're going to 16 bits because that's the bit depth of CD audio. Similarly, the sample rate of CD quality audio is 44,100 hertz, and so we want to keep that way. File type, split or interleaved. This is referring to the left and the right channels. Split often means that we're going to make separate files, a separate file for the left, a separate file for the right. Interleaved means we're going to mix them together into one file. So we want interleaved. And dithering. Dithering is a really interesting thing to look up. It's basically a little bit of noise added to the signal to cover up the harsh edges of the sound when your sound is quantized, when it's reduced down to the bit level. Remember, there are no smooth curves. Everything is basically a little bar graph when we record samples. If you were going to be bringing sounds back in, like if I mentioned before, if I had this really complex gesture that I wanted to bounce down and then bring it back into a session, I would definitely want to leave dithering off. You only want to do dithering once on something. So since this is my final project, this is my final mix down of it, I'm going to do some dithering. It doesn't usually make any difference if my sounds were already 16 bits, but the sounds and the processes I've been doing, maybe I haven't kept track, so maybe some of them have been down to 24 bits. So it doesn't hurt to add some dithering, and there are 3 different kinds. It would do you well to try each one and see what you think of them. What you're going to be listening for is the quiet moments, like the very end of reverb tails or the very delicate sounds, and see how those come out when you listen to the mix down. Let's see. Yes, we want it to normalize our file for us. Thank you for asking. And we have 2 options here: real time or offline. Real time. Some programs force you to do it in real-time mode, where if you want to bounce something, it makes you listen to the whole dang thing, when really it could be bouncing it a lot faster if we just weren't listening to it. So assuming that we've listened to it before, we'll listen to it again and make sure there are no problems. Let's just leave this offline. So let's review this. We've named it. We know where it's going to go. We've got PCM. We trust that it's picked. It's thinking in bars and beats, but it's picked the duration, the starting and ending point based on our locators up here. We can double check our duration actually, and we can see how much space it's going to take. Offline, normalize, AIFF, 16-bit, 44100, interleaved, some kind of dithering if this is the end project, and you can choose for yourself if you want to do anything with these. Then we click bounce. We can see the progress bar, and it does all of those things and it completes. Okay, and so now if I look on my desktop, I see my piece. Okay, I can really look on my desktop this way. And my piece is down there on the desktop. Well, in case you couldn't see that, here's my desktop folder this way. Here's my piece, and I can play it. And I hear that it's included enough time for my delay to die away, and then a couple seconds for reflection before the next track starts, if this ended up on a CD with other pieces. Okay, so I've avoided clipping by doing a number of things, including maybe putting a limiter on the end. I've also put an EQ on my final output here to do some mastering, and I've bounced it. So then I'm ready to drag it into iTunes or whatever and burn a CD of it and give it to my friends. It's a really good point to make a habit of burning a copy before you're quite finished, and listen to it on different systems. Your headphones at home, a portable music player, your car, your friend's stereo, the best system you can find, the worst system you can find. Make a ringtone out of it and call yourself and listen to it that way. You're going to learn things about your piece and how it comes across on different formats, and so that will always benefit you. All right, that's all for now, and congratulations on finishing your composition.